All right, let's dive into the world of Courage the Cowardly Dog. It's, on the surface, it's this kind of wacky cartoon, right? But when you really watch it, there's some surprisingly, deep stuff going on there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, who'd have thought a cartoon dog living in nowhere, Kansas would, make you think about existentialism?
It's pretty wild. Nowhere, Kansas. I mean,
Mhm.
the name itself, how does that play into the show? I mean, it's like the perfect setting, right, for all this weird stuff.
Yeah, it's like the name just emphasizes this feeling of unease, like anything could happen out in the middle of nowhere, which is kind of like how we feel about the unknown in general, right? Like that's where a lot of our anxieties come from, what we don't know.
Exactly. And then there's Courage himself. I mean, the irony of a dog named Courage who's like constantly terrified. But then he always steps up, doesn't he?
Yeah, yeah, it's this great contrast, and that's where I think the show starts to connect with some of those existentialist ideas. Like, you have philosophers like Kierkegaard who talked about how we define ourselves through our choices,
Oh.
especially when we're afraid.
So like Courage, even though he's shaking in his boots, he's still choosing to act.
Exactly, and he's faced with all these wild threats, like a giant chicken from outer space, uh, a talking banana.
Don't forget the King of the Fleas. That episode still gives me nightmares.
Oh, yeah. That's a classic. But I think a lot of those creatures, as strange as they are, they represent these sort of universal anxieties we have, The fear of the unknown, the fear of change.
Right, right. And the show, it doesn't try to sugarcoat that. It's like it's embracing the fear, saying, look, this is part of life.
Exactly. And it's not about getting rid of the fear. It's about what you do despite it,
Yeah.
how you choose to respond.
And Courage, even though he's, well, a total scaredy cat, he always chooses to protect Muriel. His love for her, it's like his superpower. It gives him the strength to be brave.
And it's not like a show of force. It's just this pure, selfless love that motivates him. And there's so much power in that. It's not about beating the bad guy or proving anything. It's about love and responsibility.
Right. It's about choosing to act even when you're scared. There's that one episode, The Mask, I think, that really gets to the heart of that.
Yeah, The Mask. It's a tough one to watch, but it really shows Courage's empathy, his willingness to endure and try to understand even when faced with with some really difficult situations.
Yeah, it makes you think about the different forms that courage can take. It's not always about fighting back. Sometimes it's about enduring and showing compassion even when it's hard.
Exactly. And that actually leads to another interesting aspect of the show, the way it tackles societal fears. So we were talking about societal fears.
Yeah, yeah. It's like the show uses all these crazy creatures and situations, but they kind of reflect real anxieties we have as a society, right?
Right. Like think about that giant chicken from outer space.
Oh yeah.
Like it's this big scary unknown thing and it just crashes into their lives, kind of like how we feel when, the world throws us a curveball,
Yeah.
right?
It's like that feeling of being out of control.
Mm.
Like anything could happen.
Exactly. And then you have episodes like the one with the computer virus.
Oh man, that one was creepy.
Yeah, and it plays on those fears we have about technology, right? Like machines taking over or us losing control.
It's funny because Courage, even though he's scared of everything, he's also pretty good at adapting, right? Like
Yeah.
he's always having to figure out how to deal with these crazy situations.
That's true. He's definitely resilient, and that's like a really important skill to have.
Yeah.
Especially in a world that's constantly changing. Like the show's kind of telling us, hey, things are gonna get weird, but you can handle it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it does it all with this mix of humor and horror it's just so unique.
You're right. It's like the humor makes it okay to be scared. Like we can laugh at the absurdity of it all, even while we're kind of creeped out.
Totally. It's like it's okay to embrace the weirdness, the uncertainty.
Exactly. And, a lot of that comes from the animation style too, right? Like the way the show looks is just as important as the stories themselves.
Oh yeah. I mean those visuals are so iconic. Like the way
Yeah.
Courage's eyes bug out or those backgrounds that kind of melt and swirl
It's
around.
so expressive, right? You can feel Courage's terror and confusion.
And it's funny too. It's like this perfect blend of creepy and hilarious.
It's It's a tough balance to strike, but Dilworth, the creator, he really nailed it. And I think that's why the show has resonated with so many people, you know? It's like we can all relate to that feeling of being a little scared and a little lost sometimes.
It's like we're all living in our own version of Nowhere, Kansas.
Exactly. And you know what's really interesting is that even though Courage is this cowardly dog, he still manages to find the strength to do what's right. He's constantly facing his fears even when he's terrified.
And it's not about like winning or being a traditional hero. It's about love and compassion. Like his love for Muriel, that's what drives him.
It's a really powerful message, you know?
Hmm.
Like even when we're scared, we can still choose to act with love and try to make things better.
And that brings us to something we haven't really talked about yet, the humor.
Oh yeah. The humor in Courage is it's definitely unique. It's dark, it's absurd. Sometimes it's even a little disturbing.
But it always works.
Right.
It's like it's never just there for shock value. It always serves the story, the themes.
Exactly. Like it allows us to deal with some pretty heavy stuff in a way that's still entertaining. You
Yeah.
know, we can laugh at the absurdity of it all, even when it's dealing with like existential dread or the fear of death.
Right. It's like it's a way to make those tough subjects a little easier to swallow.
Yeah, it's like a spoonful of sugar to help the existential medicine go down.
I love that because it's true. The humor doesn't like take away from the seriousness.
Yeah.
It actually like helps us process it. It makes it more accessible.
Exactly. And I think that's something that John Dilworth understood so well. Like he knew that humor could be uh, this really powerful tool for exploring even the darkest parts of human experience.
I think that's a perfect segue to our final part, where we'll try to wrap up what we've learned from this deep dive into Courage the Cowardly Dog. Okay, so we've talked a lot about Courage the Cowardly Dog. We've seen how it like uses this really weird blend of humor and horror and these deep themes to make something truly unique. What do we like? What do we take away from all this? What's the big takeaway?
Yeah, it's more than just a funny cartoon, that's for sure. I mean, we've talked about Courage's bravery, how he faces his fears, even though he's, well, you know, Courage the Cowardly Dog,
Hmm.
and his love for Muriel, how that's really the source of his strength and the way the show like taps into these societal anxieties we all have, but it does it through these crazy, hilarious scenarios.
Yeah, and we can't forget the animation. It's so distinctive.
Oh, absolutely. The way Dilworth uses color and shape and movement to create this sense of like dread and wonder, it's masterful. Like it adds a whole other layer to the story, you know?
Right. Like those moments where the background like melts and swirls or when Courage's eyes just like bug out in terror. It's both funny and kind of creepy and it really pulls you in. Like you really feel what he's feeling.
Exactly. And that brings us to, I think, the heart of what makes this show so compelling. It's not just a cartoon, it's like a reflection of our own lives, you know, our
Mhm.
own struggles with fear and trying to find meaning in a world that can feel really chaotic and scary.
Yeah, and it does all that while still being like really entertaining. You can just watch it for the laughs or you can like really dig deep and find all these layers of meaning.
It's true, and I think that's why it's resonated with so many people. You know, it speaks to something universal. We all have those anxieties, those fears and those
It's
hopes.
like we're all living in our own version of Nowhere, Kansas, right? Facing our own monsters.
Yeah, and courage shows us that even when we're terrified, we can still choose to act, to love, to be brave, even if it's just in small ways.
So, like, if courage can face down a giant singing cockroach, what monsters are we brave enough to face? You know,
Yeah.
in our own lives,
Right. Maybe it's that fear of failure that's stopping you from going after your dreams, or the anxiety that keeps you from speaking your truth.
or maybe it's just making a phone call you've been putting off. You know,
Whatever it is, big or small, I think Courage the Cowardly Dog reminds us that we all have that capacity for courage inside us. It might be, you know, buried under a lot of fear and self-doubt, but it's there.
so to everyone listening, I'd say go back and watch Courage the Cowardly Dog again, or if you've never seen it, definitely check it out, and pay attention to those little moments. Those moments of wisdom that are kind of sprinkled throughout the show. You might be surprised at what you discover about yourself and about courage.
Yeah, and remember, the next time you're feeling scared or uncertain, just think of Courage, that little pink dog who never gave up. And let his example inspire you to be a little braver, a little kinder, and a little more courageous in your own life. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Until next time, stay curious.